Welcome to the adventures of self. Conversations with ordinary and extraordinary people as they explore what it means to be self-expressed. Come on in. Join the adventure.
So, welcome, Spencer Madden, to the Adventures of Self.
Thank you so much for having me, Taylor, here, and shout out and hello to whoever is connecting in with this transmission. Taylor and I were just talking before we were getting going about sacredness and how you coming and connecting in energetically with this podcast across all the time and all the things that you could be doing. The fact that you are here, it is literally divine. It was meant to be here. So I really encourage you to get comfortable, strap yourself in. This is going to be a gold conversation. And I'm really honored to be in this space and sitting with you to transmit this conscious conversation that's coming through. So thanks for having me, Taylor.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks for the intro. And I think it really helps to bring in the importance of having intent, of having consciousness, of having awareness that whatever we're doing, whether you and I are sitting down from across the world having a conversation, whether somebody's listening in, whether you're having a conversation with your child, your coworker, whether you're taking a walk, that there is this opportunity to bring intense and beautiful awareness, presence, consciousness, intent into that moment. That is actually what makes all things possible.
Yeah, it's something that is coming back more and more. Like I'm in the what you would term the personal development space, loosely calling me a coach. And it's so beautiful to just see this movement of individuals talking about and being in the energetic of bringing more intention to the present moment, the now. And I see it on platforms like TikTok where so many souls are starting to talk about it. And I'm glad we're getting into this off the get-go, Taylor, because I truly believe this is one of the rememberings of who we are and, accessing our higher self, as you say, our gold self. And this comes by being present, training yourself to being present to the eternal moment. We're living in a society and a time and a construct that has us so hyper fixated on the future that we're spending all of our sacred, eternal, present moment now, really all we have, living in the future. Or many of us are caught, as we all are, in deep levels of trauma and pain and layers and half-truths and from the past, which we're then bringing in and then thinking about the past. So I feel like this is a great opportunity to send it back over to you, Taylor, and say, like, what is your real take on the power of presence and the power of this eternal moment, being here now, like I am fully present with you?
Well, first of all, it's the only way that you and I can fully connect. The inherentness of this moment, there is this possibility for me to go to something that I forgot to do or something that I need to do later. And as soon as I do that, I've lost the intimate connection that you and I choose to be here in this moment. And that just ripples and unravels out, because as soon as you lose one thread, it just loosely starts to fall apart. And obviously you can work to put that back together. You could just choose it. It's not like it actually is this struggle to get back. You just choose to be back in the moment. You choose to connect with somebody. And I think what happens, in my experience, I definitely spent decades of my life as one of those persons who was either always in the future or always in the trauma of my past. And more and more, I mean, I'm certainly not perfect, but more and more as I choose to be in presence, those concerns and worries, they have less relevance. They have less well, currency, which is a funny word, right? Because it is about what's current and what's flowing through us, right? The currency of electricity, of energy. It's actually literally what is flowing through us. And what's really amazing about presence is the expansiveness of it. That when we actually are present to the moment, the expansion of thought, of space, of time, just like from inside of us, just starts to expand out.
It's interesting that you say that, because we often think about that expand, that time stops still when you're truly locked in with another soul, or like in your flow state, and time stands still. But as we go deeper into quantum intelligence and quantum field, we actually realize when we come into those present eternal moments that we're actually accessing all of the timelines, all of the things happening simultaneously in our our higher self's form. Because ultimately we're here on this earthly experience to be able to develop that ability to lock in perfect presence, where, like you said, the worries dissolve, the burden comes off. It's not to say you still don't have to go to work, or you still don't have to take the steps to move to a new country or something like that. Those may still be there, but when you come to that present moment, again, they don't have as much relevancy, they don't have much currency. Or the opposite could be said, where they have so much that they actually don't have any. And this is the place where this is the place where, when you can access this present moment more and more and more, that the deep, intimate relationships that your soul craves will become magnetized to you. You will start to know other souls, other humans at deeper levels than you ever thought possible. This is the place where a creative flow state is accessed, and you're able to create a business or a project or a piece of art without even thinking about it, because you're completely present. The interesting thing about when you're completely present is we start moving, for what I call the intellect in the head, down into our heart space, into our intuition. And I know on a personal level, when you're doing this with another human being, as I've been doing with some soul family who are staying with me again and again and again, and then having this conversation with you, it allows you to access so much, like so much beauty can be accessed from the eternal present moment. So Taylor, we're talking about this, and I know for someone who's not, hasn't trained themselves to access the present moment on demand, it could be really valuable if you and I share perhaps a little bit of our journey of how we've trained and practiced to be able to access the present moment, whether in conversation, whether we're out on our own. So I'd love to just mirror that back to you, and like, what are you hearing in there, and how do you access and and ensure that you're staying present in the moment? Like, what are some of the tools you use?
Breath is probably the biggest one that I focus on, and there is breath practice, right? There is the opportunity to, and there are dozens or hundreds or infinite number of practices that people can bring into breath. There is not one breath practice, but it is fundamentally. I was speaking about this recently on a solo episode I did, the importance and the possibility of breath, because it is the freest, most vital resource that we have. And I read recently that it was maybe a hypothesis, but you cannot breathe, you cannot be focused on your breathing and be thinking about something at the same time. And you were talking about this concept, like I spent decades, I used to work in law, in the corporate world, and it was a very intellectual process, and it was a beautiful process, right? I don't regret my time there, but it was unfulfilling, because, as you said, there was this separation from who what was possible for me, and I was blessed with some introduction through Zen Buddhist, through Aikido, to some, beautiful breathing practice that brought everything down slow. And as things would start to get hectic and I would worry about the 10 or the 15 or the 6 million things I had to do today, tomorrow, or that I forgot to do yesterday, there was just this opportunity to say, okay, well, if something has to be done tomorrow, then that's to be done with tomorrow. And if there's something to be learned from what did or did not happen yesterday, then I can choose to sit down and have that space for that. But here now is where I am. So I think, I think dealing with the pains that I had of past and future brought me into present, because I was so overwhelmed by a lot of pain and anxiety that it got to be too much. And I can't point to one specific thing. I can identify a trend that started from one little inkling that then I was interested in, attracted to, created space that I would, if I am feeling stressed, anxious, upset, when I'm connected and I take 5 seconds to take 1, 2, 3 deep breaths, it gives me space. The like we were saying, as if by magic, those worries about tomorrow, the regrets of yesterday, push out, because literally the the emptiness of air that we bring into our lungs fills us up with something that is imperceptible, it is invisible, intangible, and yet it creates space in our consciousness, in our hearts, and from there we can we can cultivate it more, we can create more space, and we can make decisions from a grounded, heart-led space rather than trying to figure it all out from an intellect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to hear how you've cultivated your own work and presence. Yeah. And in particular, what you bring, because you work with a lot of clients, and bringing consciousness into people's practice.
Yes, absolutely. So I will flow into that in 1 second here, but I wanted to just build off of something you said there, where you said quite beautifully, like you're bringing air, this emptiness, this beautiful breath air into your lungs. And the reason this can be so grounding and so healing and so activating is, yes, when we're looking at it from our 3D, width, height, depth level, air is empty, and we need to go into chemical compounds and get all sciencey, and we can break it up into oxygen and these different gases in there. But when we go deeper than that, like when we go deeper than the little compounds, you actually end up moving into levels of perception that literally are infused with what so I will call God source consciousness. Other people will call it the creator. Other people will say God or Allah in terms of the mainstream religions. Other people call it the great mystery. Indigenous called it the creator, the great mother, the infinite, the divine, all it was, all it is, all it will ever be, whatever term you want to put on it. When you go deeper into that air, with every breath, you're actually infusing this life force in you. People call it prana, chi, flow states. But beyond that prana, like what is in that prana when we keep going deeper and deeper into it, is literally pure God, pure source. So every time you stop and take those 3 breaths, you can use this as a moment to connect into your infinite nature. This is where you can connect into literally limitless possibility by that intentional breath in and out, knowing that every time you're breathing into this physical vessel that we can touch, I can touch this screen, you're bringing in that energy of the infinite and out. And if you do this 5, 10, 15 times a day, set a phone alarm if you're just getting started. This is what I used to do to train myself to make sure I do. when it goes off, stop, take those 3 simple breaths, and then just take a minute, close your eyes, pause, and just tune into your heart space, knowing that you are infinite. And if you are infinite, by extension, if we want to get all rational and get up in our head again, well, we know that, of course, we can handle anything that comes our way. Of course, we know we can transition from feeling burdened and stressed with our reality into feeling free and opportunity that you get to do these different tasks and challenges. So it's a very powerful practice that, on a personal level, I've done many, many times. And quite frankly, I feel like I could use a tune-up. So maybe I'll use this podcast as my opportunity to set an alarm for 10 times, or, every hour on the hour can be a great thing. Take your 3 breaths, tune into your limitless nature. And you do this enough and it'll move from what I call believing, which I find interesting how the word lie is in believing. You're not going to believe, you might be believing from Taylor and I right now that this is a great way to be present. Everything's going to expand. Time's going to stop still. But what will happen when you set the alarm and you do these 3 breaths and then you tune into your limitless nature is you're going to transition into knowing. You're going to move from believing into knowing. And when you move into the space of knowing that you are limitless and knowing that anything is possible because of this breath, your entire world will change. It will absolutely change 100%. Great practice, super simple. If you're really devoted to changing, if you really want to shift your life, if you're a man out there and you want to become more present with your partner, more present with your tasks, your projects, your kids, whatever it is, you still have to do the thing, right? You have to set the alarms. And when the alarms go off, or whether it's, you're doing your 45-minute practice or 20-minute breath work in the morning, you still have to actually do it. And that's where that level of responsibility down here for your consciousness development, for your expansion comes in. So just encouraging any of the listeners out there to be ready to go onto this journey from believing to knowing. You actually have to do the thing.
Yeah. There's the sort of famous saying that I certainly saw in the ashram of a yoga practice that I was part of many years ago, and you see it bandied around that an ounce of experience is worth a ton of theory. So you can listen to me, you can listen to Spencer, you can read 1,000 books, but until you actually take the time to do it, to take the action, it's just theory, it's just believing, it's just sort of it's a nice concept, but the opportunity of bringing that in, and that's what's interesting, because I've talked to other people on this show, because what works for Spencer might not work for Taylor, and what works for Taylor might not work for a particular listener, and that's cool. That's why we're all unique. We're all some unique expression of divinity. My experience, Spencer's experience. The opportunity is, what I would say, and maybe we can get into this, is there is a truth of higher nature that actually goes beyond words. So it's actually impossible to bring words into. You were saying, well, I mean, in the Upanishads, it says truth is one. The sages call it by many names. So that's where you were saying God, Allah, the thing that has always been, the spirit.
Millions of names.
Exactly. But what Spencer and I are talking about, and where we will find a commonality, is this experience with something that not only is higher than us, but actually intimately flows through us and is always available to us. And so it has this paradoxical nature that it feels, on the one hand, that is, this eternal godlike consciousness that is obviously bigger and more just everything than the human possibility of my 80, 100 years here. And yet it is what is the reason that I'm here, and it is always available to me. And it goes to what we were speaking about in the beginning, this, bringing consciousness into it, I wanted to come back to something that you said at the beginning, because I love this word. You spoke about remembering.
Mm-hmm.
There is this concept that I came across, that we have in our culture separated ourselves, and that we've actually dismembered ourselves. Our soul is over here, our brain is on this other side, our heart is maybe back here, hidden on a shelf that we don't let other people see. And this idea of remembering is putting ourselves back together as a whole, to take the member parts of us and to constitute them as the fullness that we truly are.
Yeah, that was powerful. I'm just going to sit in that one for a moment. I feel like that's one of the ones to clip for the segment. So for listeners out there, just grab that little blue thing and scroll back for the next 60 seconds and close your eyes and tune into that again. That was beautiful, brother.
Well, I would like to, because it goes to what we were speaking about before we got on, because what I hear when you, or what calls to me when you speak about remembering, is there is a wisdom, there is a connection. You know, it's what it connects us to when we bring that breath, when we bring that spirit of life into us. As you say, it's not just emptiness. It's not just some elements on a periodic table. It is something much deeper that you can look at traditions around the planet that have been around for thousands and tens of thousands of years, and how much that is starting to, the acceleration of it dissipating from us, and our ability to actually remember the divinity, the sacredness of who we are on this planet and what's possible for us.
Yes, there's what I term right now, the Great Awakening is the word that I utilize. A lot of people call it activations, the Great Remembering, whatever you want to say it. And like, I truly know that right now, in this finite reality of the year we're calling 2021, millions of people, men and women, souls embodied in physical form, are remembering that we are aspects of this energy that we are breathing in. We are literally aspects of God consciousness, whatever you want to call it. We are, a good way to think about this in a linear mind is, we're a fragment, or a good way is we're a drop of the divine. So if, like, think about the ocean, right? If you take one drop out of the ocean, both the drop and the ocean are water. So the drop that just came out knows that it's the ocean, even though it's a little droplet. This is what people are remembering right now, where there's no separation between us in this physical form and our creator, this energy, the quantum field, infinite intelligence. There's no separation. We literally are that. And this is what we're remembering. And you can go really spiritual with remembering, you can go in a whole bunch of different directions, but ultimately, to me, the beauty of this remembering is coming back to this knowingness that while we are in this body, in this form, we have the ability to be artists with our life. We have the ability to create anything that we would like to see into form. Like, we're talking about miracles and synchronicities and the ability for things to just show up, as if by magic. This is what's happening. Millions of people around the world are having synchronicities coming in left, right, and center. The resources, the locations, the soul family, the job, the finances, whatever. These things are just starting to show up for more and more people who have done the work, who are practicing the breath, who are taking themselves deeper. And we have this whole segment of society globally right now, literally millions of people who are on this timeline of becoming their higher self and connecting in with what's possible. So this is what I call the Great Awakening, because prior to this, we go back 200-300 years, it hadn't actually happened. Like, people were in the dark ages and there was a lot of corruption. We were talking about the sacred masculine mystery schools before we got on, people hiding these texts. And then we got into the Industrial Revolution, and then we went through World War I and II. And now, we got into 2000s, and then we got into 2021, or 2012, which many people remember the end of the Mayan calendar. Well, really, why that is, it's like the Earth wasn't meant to end. There was just an intentional energetic shift in this planet, which allowed people like you and I to expand, to start remembering just little hints of what was possible. And now, with millions and millions of people remembering, well, what happens? You start hitting critical mass where this kind of podcast, it goes quantum. It gets to the right people who start making changes. And then my podcast helps people, and people start having these experiences where they move from believing to knowing. Sometimes it's an epiphany moment. I have clients, I get messages on Instagram from people you're literally walking down the street and you just remember, and they're like, wow, like I'm connected to something out there, different planets. They have rememberings of past lifetimes. Sometimes it's like that. Other times it's more subtle. Some people, we have a lot of trauma or things built up, or just our physical body's different, our environment's different. We just need to do that breathing exercise for 3 months and just be present and practice, and then things will happen. There's no set timeline for people remembering, but let me assure you, to the listener out there, if you do your breath and you find and explore and go on this journey of the tools and the practices that work for you, maybe it's cold exposure, maybe it's walking in nature, maybe it's just setting 20 minutes of really intentional playtime with your child and committing to that every single day, whatever it is. If you continue to do this and you continue to be drawn to podcasts, you do things like, oh, I need to be off social media for 2 weeks because I'm just feeling overwhelmed by the vortex. If you actually do these things and you follow what feels good in your heart, your lower, your gut instinct, very soon you're going to really start remembering. And I think it's really cool, Taylor, and this is one thing that just puts a smile on my face, is if I scale back to when this whole thing kicked off, right? We know the whole situation where of control, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. It's still happening. When this whole thing kicked off like 18 months ago, I was like, okay, this is a huge shift globally. It's going to be messy in the third dimensional perspective, in the height, width, depth. Like, a lot of things have to play out. But what I've seen during this whole thing, when lots of people are suffering in hardship, is this whole rising and remembering, awakening of souls who this whole situation has actually stepped up many of our frequencies and really, called us forward to remembering, faster, more, because the universe, God, only gives you remembering that you're capable of holding. So if you're remembering these things, just know, because you are infinite, you can hold it, you can process it, you can integrate it. You wouldn't get more than you can handle. And this is happening globally. I remember looking at this thing when it kicked off 18 months ago to now. Like, I go on TikTok, I'm going to be starting a TikTok channel, and a bunch of people in my tribe are. You scroll TikTok, which we know is controlled by the Communist Party of China. And there is so many people who are remembering beyond the physical body, and they're all sharing. They're all talking about, people are figuring out and discovering their own truths. People are moving from not even believing anything to believing that there is a spark of limitless nature, into knowing on a simple digital platform. And this is happening in sacred circles around men's groups all the way around the world. This is happening in women's red tents that are making widespread comeback. This is happening as neighbors come to know each other because of, this pandemic thing that's been rolled out. All of these things are happening as people remember more and more and more.
Yes, absolutely, brother. what I notice in myself and in my environment is how we start to hold each other, how we start to pull, not like forcibly, but like there is an energy that we are all starting to rise, so that there is an inkling of something that sparks something in me. There's a question. I think you were talking about the three-dimensional world, which we certainly can connect with and see and touch, and I can, knock on this computer and it's there. But certainly the extent to which we as humans have created an artifice on top of that, right? So there's, for listeners, there's a beautiful picture or photograph of mountains and a natural scene behind you, Spencer. And I look out my window, and I'm blessed to be across from a park with massive trees and greenery. There is the reality of that, and then there is the artifice that we as humans beautifully, if somewhat dysfunctionally and in a limited way, created. But as you say, right, it's all part. It is all as it should be. And what is happening more and more, I can see it in my lifetime. I'm a few years older. I'm 51, and so with what I grew up with, there was still this inkling of this is what we were creating was real, and there's so much of that. I mean, we could point to hundreds, if not thousands, of examples. And I'm sure if you started speaking, people would start to imagine their own things, that people still interact with that 3D world because, I want I want a shirt, and maybe I want to look nice, and whatever that means. And yes, I want a computer, and I want it to work well, so I'm going to do this, and all of that. But that the system as a whole is really starting to show its cracks. And not only is it, as you say, everybody's starting to say, oh, look at those cracks, and they're getting bigger. And the more there is awareness of that, the more it brings people into that.
Yeah, part of this awakening is a return to a return to something that is called unity consciousness. So this is where people are not separate. You can break this down in times that have happened before, as let's picture like a indigenous tribe, like we're in an indigenous tribe, and we are, we have 40 of us in our indigenous tribe, and like we literally live and die and breathe together. And we are all unique. The little girl who's 5 years old with her, her whale skin doll or something, is still a unique soul from her grandmother, who's the matriarch of this tribe. But yet, because they spend so much time together, and because they haven't had all of these things of the simulation, the TV, the mainstream, all these things piled on, they are very close to being in, if not in, unity consciousness. Indigenous, when we scale it back, communicated by telepathy. Like a lot of these languages that are that the modern day indigenous are sharing and stuff. Like when we actually go back beyond and beyond, like people communicated with telepathy because we were so dialed in tune on the same frequency band with each other through the energetic of unity consciousness that you didn't need to speak. This is something that is coming back. I'm already noticing it with friends like Soul Tribe out there, where we're starting to read each other's minds. You may have had this out there. The listener may have had this, let's say, maybe with one of your children, if you're a mother or your father out there, or perhaps, a deep lover or, a partner that you've been with for a while, you could start to read each other's mind. But this is starting to come back where like you're starting to pick up on other people's minds that you may not even have met. And I'm talking with lots of people who, are in the work and are practicing and, doing their spiritual development, that are starting to realize this. I feel like in 2-3 years, like mark my words, you can come back to this finite year, whatever it is, June something, 2021, a couple years from now, people will literally be talking about telekinesis, telepathy. People will know people who can do it, and people will be practicing it and trying it. It'll be on TikTok. These are the things that are coming as we move into unity consciousness. But how do we remember unity consciousness, Taylor, right? This is the big thing. Well, we've become separate through this matrix, this reality, all of the stuff that's happened in our past. We've forgotten that ultimately, if we are all aspects of the divine, if we are all creator source energy, then we can't be separate from each other. That's literally impossible to be separate from each other. We can only convince ourselves we're separate, or be tricked or duped or psyoped or programmed or conditioned into thinking we're separate. Well, this is what people are remembering, right? Like the telekinesis is just one little, or the telepathy is just one little aspect of it. But it's this remembering of, let's be in community. Let's truly be supported by our tribe, not just online. Online is a great aspect of it, absolutely. But I'm talking about like anchoring unity consciousness globally is going to truly happen by a synergy of the online. But the fundamental foundation will be people within your physical proximity, people who are literally on the land growing with, people who you're helping figure out newer technologies. You're working on that free energy device together. People who you're helping nurse back to health when you can't go into the hospital or something because maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe that projection has dissipated, and you're helping heal, and people are doing all these things. As we continue to do that, the energetics of unity consciousness will rise and rise and rise, and that will permeate across the globe. We're seeing it already in the discussion of people thinking, I don't want to live in a city right now. This has been illuminated by a lot of people through the last 18 months that maybe the city isn't actually where their soul wants to be. It was great for the first, let's say, 40 years of their life or 30 years of their life, because that's what they knew. But that's one of the beautiful things about this remembering is now people are thinking, they're like, I feel like it would be better if I was on the land, I knew how to grow food, I was around other people that I really liked, and I was in community. Like all of a sudden, that energetic sounds amazing to a lot of people. That's like a huge thing that I'm expanding into right now. And this is all going to keep that unity consciousness energetic going up and up and up and up. And the really exciting thing is in years from now, we'll have largely transitioned. I know this in my heart. We'll have largely transitioned our Earth into higher frequencies, our civilizations into higher frequencies, where things like love, bliss, joy, expansion, play, creativity are the dominant energetic. We won't have people sitting at home to the level that we do now in depressed, suicide, war, rape, terror, like mindless entertainment programming. Those things will be dissolving as the energetic unity consciousness goes up, and things like love, the energetic of love, will be much more intentionally widespread across the planet in that eternal now moment for lots and lots of people. That's not to say there's not going to be rough transitions, collapses of civilizations, maybe supply chain stopping, like all of these things, like those can still play out. But when you're that limitless creator and you're in community where they can help you and pick you up and join hands with you, there's literally nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. That is just part of the remembering of this unity consciousness. And before I kick it back over to you, I'll just ask the listener who's out there just to drop into this and maybe take notice of this. Next time you have a really genuine, intimate conversation, just step back from that conversation and think pre this rolling out 18 months ago, pre the mainstream and all this stuff, did you truly appreciate that human to human unity conscious connection? I'll tell you one thing on a personal level, Taylor, I didn't. I'm on a phone now, and if I'm talking to someone, like I'm calling a couple plumbers, I got an issue at my house, I literally am enjoying this 8-minute conversation with another normal human being living their life, sharing knowledge with me. like I never have before. And I get off the phone, I'm like, wow, I feel really good. That was an amazing human connection. I was so caught up in my own stuff before that, I didn't even take the time to think of it. But the last 18 months has illuminated that is a sign of unity consciousness within me.
That's such a beautiful story and example, because it's such a simple one, but it's a simple that is profound. And you're absolutely right. You know, if I look back at myself 18 months ago, I was in a crisis state, not literally, but in my mind, I was living crisis. And when all of this started to transpire, it gave space. And as you say, it's not to say that that there won't be turmoil, personal, collective. Who knows, right? I don't wish ill on anybody, but the reality is there's energy at play. And I think there is this opportunity to learn to ride with it, to, you know, surf it, to connect with, to be congruent with what is happening, and to learn intimately what it means to be with a particular energy, or to be overwhelmed by it, right? To say, well, who am I? You know, because it's, you know, it's like in that ocean analogy, right? Every drop can be part of the next wave, the next breakers that are coming in on the reef. Every drop is part of that. If one of those drops says, oh, no, I can't handle this wave is too big, and I'm going to be hurt, and I'm going to be dashed upon the rocks, and this is going to be painful, I need to step out of this. Well, you will be dashed upon the rocks. Because in a real wave, in the real ocean, right, which we are, as you say, all part of it, and it is this remembering, we're all part of that, right? And to be with that wave, to just be part of that, to be part of whatever the motion is, the energy, right? There is turmoil, that there's a rising, and that is a beautiful part of what it means to be in this reality. You know, I've made points on many episodes. You know, I have a very Taoist perspective, and really appreciating the natural cycles and rhythms. You know, we were talking about, and it'd be interesting to get into masculine. You know, I mean, our female sisters, right, are much closer tied to rhythms and in their bodies. But you know, when I look out and look at what's happening, the trees starting to become in full bloom as we're heading into summer, and knowing that in 6 months all the leaves will be gone, and that is exactly as it should be. The tree doesn't say, how dare you, I want to keep my leaves every day until eternity, right? It just says, okay, that's what we do, because then we grow, we take up this opportunity to come into ourselves. And we do have this connection with breath, right? We bring the breath in that fills us up, and then we let it out, and there's this constant ability to connect with just flow, to allow. And what I wanted to goes into what I want to bring in, because I, you know, personally connect them. You and I do similar work in terms of getting people to their creative potential, their infinite potential. And one of the things that, I mean, I think even when I started this work, and maybe it is still a temptation, and I know people say, oh, well, you know, that's people put the egoic filter of, well, I want this type of house, I want this type of, let me go down my shopping, if I can have everything, okay, I'm just going to go through all the beautiful things that society has told me that I should have, and those are the things I want, and those are the things I focus on. And well, if you get them, you're living a much more shallow existence, and usually you're not going to get those, because you're not actually in line with what your heart is really about. And what there is this moment of, or this opportunity to step into true creativity, to step into true presence and infinite possibility is not bringing our limited concept of I want XYZ and I want it to look like this red, white, and blue, or green, yellow, black, or whatever it is. There's this allowance. There is a letting go. And when that letting go happens, the heart opens it, and we start to see what that individual drop of the ocean is here for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we'll flow right into the sacred masculine aspect of this conversation, because that's really key for the masculine energetic, is going on this journey of inner standing. And I say that specifically, I don't say understanding, I say inner standing. Like the eternal question that's been asked throughout the ages, like, why am I here? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? Why am I in this existence? Literally in a physical form, you're a man, you have a cock and a balls, like you're in this form. Why are you here? And this has been an age-old adage. And with the masculine energetic, typically, not always, but it often comes back to discovering your purpose. That is the core of any men's work, marketing, like join my program to better yourself or your leadership or something, often comes down to identifying, taking action on, and living your purpose. And when there is a man on purpose who also has worked on these other areas, such as his relationship and his relationship to the earth and other people, when he's on that purpose, that is when he will be in that sacred masculine expanded energetic, where you can tap into what I would call your God source, limitless creator energy. However, what has the society and the programming and the mainstream and all of these things done for the last decades upon decades? Well, they've programmed men to fall in line and not go on this intentional inner journey of discovery of this purpose, while simultaneously learning about intimate relationships, masculine, feminine, all this kind of stuff. But they've taken that out of us. And this is part of the remembering. I see more men on the journey to discovering, I like to call it actualizing their purpose, because it's already out there. When you're infinite and you know that it's out there, and we don't have to go into this episode, but you could talk about timelines or like different pathways and stuff. Everything's happening at once. There's already a reality out there where you have come in line with your purpose. You are remembering that you're an aspect of the divine and that you can do anything you want. And there's also a reality out there that has that beautiful house on the beach that you want as well. There's literally all those realities out there. And all you have to do is align and take the steps, and you will get on the pathway, and that can come in. So needless to say, if you're out there and you're a brother and you're feeling like you're just feeling, let's just bring it down to what really matters. You're just feeling, and that there's something you're meant to bring through, but maybe you don't have an idea, or maybe you've taken some steps and you've fallen down. Just know that it's actually the journey. The journey of discovering, and I say that in air quotation marks, discovering your purpose is what is actually going to lead you to your purpose. And the beautiful thing is, when you go on that journey, and it may take a number of finite years, you're going to have so many lessons, so many experiences, so many beautiful souls will come into your life, and you'll find that thing. And we often think it's a thing, right? Like men like to think linear. We like to be up in our intellect. We're up in our head. It's a thing. Like I am a grower. Like I do a lot of organic gardening, permaculture and stuff like that. But then we actually look at that and we think, as you go on the journey, you get to that point where you're identifying as I am a gardener, I am a grower, I'm a farmer. And then you'll realize very quickly, and again, this is something I've realized, but it might not be 100% from believing to knowing yet, but I know that that's actually just a label, and I'm not necessarily identified with that. I can choose to identify that I am a grower, I am X, But that doesn't matter. You're going to realize on this journey to your purpose that your purpose is just to be here on this journey. And that is one of the most freeing things that I have had the pleasure of witnessing men step into. Go on this journey, you'll find your purpose, you'll create a business, you'll become a better father, you'll do all these things. And as you keep going deeper into yourself and you're remembering, you're going to realize very, very quickly that those are just aspects of this journey, and your purpose is literally to come down here and remember. That's it. Come down here and remember. I have this one thing that came through very deeply for me when I was in a deep activation about a year ago, Taylor, and then I'll kick it back over to you. And this is what I love to lead, this is what I love to gift to the listeners who are going on this journey of this sacred masculine and unlocking. And quite frankly, you can apply this if you're a soul sister out there who's listening as well. This isn't like a gender masculine feminine, where I have 3 words and they're over there on my wall. And I know that if you play with the energetics of these 3 words and bring them into your day every single day, your journey towards your purpose or your best business, your higher self, having that dream house will magnetize, or the timeline will come in a lot sooner with these words. So the number 1 is play. Play, play, play. We have forgotten that when we're in physical form, one of the most beautiful things that we can do is play. And that can be anything. You can define play as anything. It's how it feels. Like if you feel playful, you feel like you're a kid again, you feel free and liberated. It doesn't matter if you're knitting or you're rock climbing or you're meditating. It doesn't matter. When you have that feeling and you bring that into your day all the time, you remember, hey, like this realm I'm in, I may not be here in this physical form forever. So why not play? Why not use your hands? Why not use your eyes and do these things that really build this beautiful energetic? It's going to move you closer to your purpose or whatever you're desiring to create in your life, because you're in a higher frequency. You're expanding. You're not worried. You're not stressed. You're not burdened. So bring that conscious play in. Number 2, experiment. This is a huge thing. Like this entire reality we're in, from the time you get birthed in through your mother to the time you literally depart your vessel, is an experiment. You are an artist. There are no rules. The only rules are the ones that you're putting on yourself and you're buying into. So what if you just kicked away all the rules, went on this journey of freeing yourself and just experimented? Great example we were talking about earlier, Taylor, where what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. I know it's probably similar to you. I don't speak for you, but I imagine it's the same thing where you go on this thing, and I've tried modalities and tools, and I've had some results with some work awesome. Some were great for that moment of where I was 5 years ago, but I no longer serve me. But that's the experimentation, right? That's the beautiful human desire to get curious, because I believe all children are naturally curious. And it's just the programming, the simulations, the tax paying, the government, the things you see on the media that as we, evolve or grow into these adult forms, that they just pile stuff up on top of it and say you don't experiment. So see your life as an experiment. Powerful thing is wake up in the morning and just ask yourself, how can today be a divine experiment? What possibility will flow in for me today? And just be in that expansive, curious, experimental energy. And then number 3 is love. So play, experiment, love. Ultimately, if you consciously and with intention focus on your heart space, breathing your air into your heart space a few times a day, you're going to expand. Here's another great thing you can try and do if you feel like maybe your heart's a little armored as men are. And now I've been told, I've literally been at personal development events before where I've had powerful female leaders looking in my face and I cannot feel your heart, Spencer. And I've gone on a huge journey of opening it, and I keep opening it every single day. So I get it to the brothers and sisters out there who are so closed down that you don't even really know what love feels like, because you're constricting yourself and you're trying to use your mind to say oh, that's love. She's giving me love. She's making me a plate of food. But that's not necessarily love. It's an aspect of love, But as you go and do the work, your heart will open and open and open and open. And then this is, again, ties right in like we talked about, Taylor, with unity consciousness, creating beautiful communities, magnetizing people in. It's because of your literal heart energetic that is rippling out. So those are the three things that I will share. If someone wants to go on a bit of a deep dive and just play with that, try it for a week and then send me a message on Instagram and let me know, like, how did that go? I'd be really curious.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of that. But again, as we said, simple is profound. When you talk about play and experiment, you were speaking, and I know you said like discover, in quotes or whatever, because we have this, we've kind of been conditioned to think we have to go off and discover or find our true purpose or whatever it is, that it's something out there. And when we get to it, then, because it's like you say, the masculine, and I think that this is, I can't speak for, but it is a masculine force to go, right? You can see it in the vector kind of, terminology, and that we go to do something, to get something. But where I think like both play and experiment and love comes in is you don't find or discover your true nature, you create it. And that is through play, through experiment, and love just permeates the whole thing. But the play and the experiment, one of my mentors, who I actually kind of is, like the has given me the most foundation.
Nice.
And things that she has said are just the most fundamental, memories for me of what is true. And she says that I've learned so much from my mistakes, I'm thinking of making a few more, right?
Yeah.
This idea that we do something and we quote unquote fail, and therefore we look bad and we are a lesser person for it. Sorry, but fuck that. Like, if you've done something from your heart with love, and you've experimented with something and you've determined that it's not true for you, or wow, it is true for you, but you're not quite where you would like to be with that, that is a beautiful thing, regardless of it. If it's infused with love and it is coming from your heart, then it's true.
Yeah, I think this is a good moment to just drop in too, because we're talking about the masculine, and just make the brother who's about to go out and because I know it can sound so simple, but like esoteric. It's like you have all these things on, just play, experiment, love. Like, what does this actually mean? And it's really important when you go on this journey that you be very mindful of the energetics of competition, which is something that's very pervasive right now among men who are going on this, where that's a very old paradigm, this need to compete both with self and both against other men, right? Like, how many men out there on this planet are, we've been trained that, oh, that guy's got a trophy wife, I should have a trophy wife. Well, that guy's got a BMW, I got to get a bigger BMW or a faster BMW. Like, these things are literally programmed into ourselves to the point where then we start competing with ourselves. Many of us have traumas from how our parents raised us, and we ended up falling into states of competing on some sort of level. And it's really like a distinction when you go on this journey of these three simple energetics. Be very mindful of, are you infusing competition into play? This doesn't mean you can't have what I call like the healthy masculine competition, where you get 25 of your mates out and you have a good old soccer match, and you have some of that, like that good masculine competition bonding. That's what I'm not talking about it. I believe that energetic does have a place in the new earth, and because it's healthy to have that masculine competition, but it's that competition that actually moves you into contractive states where you feel your heart contracting, or maybe you feel your gut contracting. So it's a point to be aware of when you're doing this, and it can just be as simple as, I have a reminder, because competition is a deep energetic that I'm transcending. It's something I talk about a lot in my content as well, where once a day I just check in with myself and I stop and close my eyes and just tune into, like, where have I been competing with myself or others? Very simple question. Where have I been competing with myself or others? And as we did, where we sat before we hit record and we just tune into the energetic, I just sit in that. Maybe it's 5 seconds, I get it right away. A lot of times I know, and then when I tune in and stop, I remember again. 30 seconds. Some people might sit there for 5 minutes. Maybe nothing even comes through, but it's the act of just doing that simple practice, being aware of that energy, which ultimately that's being conscious, right? Intentionally putting awareness onto that aspect is a level of consciousness. We talk about upgrading your consciousness. A lot of men out there in the masculine space talking about, upgrade your consciousness to create X, Y, and Z results. Well, consciousness just means that you actually do that thing and sit with that energy. Be conscious of that energetic of competition. And that's how, you literally raise your frequency. And you start doing this in multiple aspects of your life, and all of a sudden things start opening up that were previously unfathomable to yourself 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago.
I really appreciate you bringing in, as you say, the practice that you have on a regular, and if you remember, on a daily basis, to check in with where you are, because I do think that for people getting starting out in whatever aspect of consciousness, thinking that they're not doing something right if they fall back or whatever it is, because we always have. There's always a part of us from our programming, or maybe it's ingrained in the human self as part of the learning and the opportunity we have for growth. That I talk about how there are both masculine and feminine energies that move through all of us, and that there are functional and dysfunctional aspects of those, and we can choose to be connected with either of those, and whether it's inertia or where we are in the growth and evolution of consciousness, or whether it's inherent from the beginning of time to eternity, the inertia brings us, or sorry, the I can't remember the word, but our energy brings us naturally back to a dysfunctional side or expression. And it's because it's bringing consciousness to that tendency that we say, oh, wait, and it may not even about, well, I'm going to beat Spencer, or I'm going to do this. It's like, no, what am I doing in myself? Where and I love that, you because it's really it's a small point, but it's a very important one, because without our willingness to be vigilant with ourselves, we can go off the rails and we're lost down ourselves. It's the opportunity, with breath, with consciousness, with awareness, to say, just, ask a question. And am I being competitive with myself? Am I being competitive with Spencer, or my partner, or my friend, or the shop clerk, or whomever it is? And not to get in a state of beating ourselves up. Oh, well, there I go again, and I'm a bad person, and let me get the whip out and talk about how bad I am. That's another dysfunctional aspect, right? It's about awareness, right? It goes back to what we were talking about, awareness and intention. I want to turn, because you were talking, and we've been talking about this, masculine energy, and you work, because you brought in New Earth. This is I'd say a rising concept, new Earth, and I love that you bring New Earth and masculine together. And we were talking before we got going, right? The opportunities, I think you and I, however we want to call it, are connected to some concept of New Earth masculinity and masculine energy, and that is not a for anybody listening, that is not meant to be sort of a unilateral thing, a theme, right? It is an opportunity for us as men to connect with what is a more sacred, conscious higher connection to what's possible for masculine energy and for men, but that is intimately tied to a sacredness for the divine feminine, and recognizing that not only in ourselves, but and maybe, I mean, it depends on the person. Some, it's about recognizing the feminine that is all around us, that gave birth to us, that is the womb of all creation. And for some, that's, you know, recognizing that as a possibility within us, that we are not separate from that creative potential. But regardless, there is this, you know, it goes, I think it goes to your unity consciousness. That you know, in Taoism, right? The Tao is one and the Tao that can be explained is not the Tao. Everything comes from something, however you want to call it, and as coming into this existence, it splits. So we have protons and we have electrons, we have light, we have dark. There is an aspect of polarity that is created, but through the marriage, the balance of those energies, of those potentials, that is what is like, I think also calling us to be remembered, that divine masculine and feminine is within all of us. And you know, what is our opportunity as men, or what is the opportunity of masculine to truly connect with divine feminine?
Yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I'm sure we could do a whole podcast on just this subject, because it's quite wide spanning. Now, for the brother out there or the sister out there, like, let's just assume right now, for the sake of this conversation, that you understand that you have aspects within yourself of both the like sacred masculine energy, divine feminine energy. Please note that often when we start this journey of playing with these energies, we can genderize them, where we often think like, oh, it's feminine, and men will think, oh, I'm not female, that's weak, or they'll think like, you know, they'll really genderize it. And this is where I find that saying them in Chinese terms, like the yin and the yang, can be, you know, especially for mainstream North Americans or Europeans getting on this journey, it can be really great to switch out those words to help take away this energetic of like it's a man or a woman. Because the reality is we have these two unique types of energies that, when are united, are literally, like we talked about, God consciousness, the beloved great mystery. But when you bring them together, you create this synergy. And the work of this remembering, let's say as a man right now, is for me to find my unique balance of the masculine and feminine within me. When that happens, I can access flow states, higher levels of consciousness. I'm at my most creative. And this is part of that journey. Now, let's expand just outside for a little bit, and let's bring in a little gender here, and let's talk about, you know, what I know is the role of souls that have, you know, incarnated in this physical body as a man with a cock and a balls, and then, you know, an actual woman. So I believe we are remembering that it is the role of a man to be a sacred protector of children, the divine feminine, and his fellow man, as well as the animals and this earthly reality that we live on. So notice the words there, sacred protector. Now, over time, the role of man was really transformed from protector into warrior being controlled. Like the vast majority of men have been warriors with an overlord, a king, whatever, over top of you, and doing their politicians, bringing all this war, like rape, terror programming throughout the ages. You can read the history books; they're full of it. And then what happened with, you know, this agenda to control and keep people in boxes and not remembering their limitless state is there's been an agenda for like the last 50, 60 years, really, I'd say since post World War II, to, you know, almost feminize the man
Mhm.
and bring more of the feminized. The big thing is, little boys don't cry is a really damaging thing. You're really taking away and demasculating the man. And this remembering we're going on right now is about moving from this broken warrior energy who's being told to, and moving through this contracted, effeminate man that's being sold to us as normal, and going on this journey to remembering the sacred protector. Now, first of all, it's really important, the two words, right? So protector, that doesn't have any energetic of aggressor, person going in and taking, person, conquering. No, it's a protector. You are there to stand up for what you believe in. You're there to stand for love. You're not going to let someone bowl you over, but you're not going to go out on some crazy offensive either. You're in that divine alignment where you know your truth, you know you're grounded, you're connected, and you know that if you have to be a protector, not a defender, a protector, you can step into that role. And this is sacred because we haven't really remembered this for a long time. We've been very much in that broken warrior controlled mode. So it's, there's a lot of pain that needs to be transmuted. There's a lot of lineage stuff that men are clearing right now from all of those past warrior energetics that are literally in our DNA coding. So you're literally transmuting that out. Now, a sacred protector is also on this journey of purpose, of self-discovery. That's part of that energetic. It's also a level of provider, but not in the sense of what we've been told before, where you have to be the sole breadwinner. We've seen this flip in our society where there's many female breadwinners now. Now it's about coming into that balance, and this ties in with unity consciousness of how can I be in my most creative, expanded state that is of high contribution to the energetics and thriving of the community that I reside in. Mm. That is what a sacred protector does. For me, when I'm in community, I'll be the first one up in the morning planning which seeds are going in our permaculture plant. That will be a large part of my sacred protector role for the children of the community, for the women of the community, for my fellow man of the community. Another, sacred protector role may be providing beautiful art and nourishing and training some of the children to be more expansive. Another man might be a healer. Another man might be literally the guy who's walking around the perimeter and making sure nothing's amiss. Like, we all are coming into our sacred protector roles. And this, in terms of, let's talk in the divine, the female is the divine feminine, very creative, naturally lovely, nurturing, loving, that mother energy, that guidance and ability to make decisions from not a place of malice, from not a place of like some rigidity that men typically can make it from. So it's all about, for me, that is the divine feminine, is truly how our world moves into a society where we don't war, we don't fight, we know our truths, like we literally work together. All these things that sound like kumbaya or Shangri-La, to me, comes into fruition, unity consciousness, when the divine feminine is supported in us, but also in the women, because women have such a beautiful way to nurture and birth. Like, if we truly want to birth a new society, a new earth, a place where limitless possibility is literally the default, the default programming, a high level energetic, the women have to be remembered. And clearly, if we look back at society, at how what we term the patriarchy has structured our world with the subjugation of women, hasn't really created a world that we're really proud of. I believe everything I don't believe, I'm still training, I'm catching myself. I know that everything that was in the past happened for a divine reason to get us to this point. But now we're at a real choice point moment because of the level of consciousness among the populace of men, where we can choose to say, well, how do we create a stable, structured, grounded platform for which the divine feminine can feel safe and in her heart to fully expand into this possibility where let's talk tactical, practical, like where ideas come through or situations are created where someone invents a device that can change the world, or someone heals because the divine feminine was there. That's the role of the sacred masculine protector, is setting up the energetics, the physical safety, the financial safety in some regards, emotional safety, so that woman can heal as well. Because as you and I know, Taylor, the patriarchy, or this dominant past energetic, has impacted women and subjugated women just as much as it has subjugated and impacted men. So we're healing together. And when we nurture this platform within ourselves and we create this sacred protector energy within ourselves, by extension, we can then give it as a sacred gift to the woman in our life, to the women in our life, to the children in our life, to all of these other women, and to our male friends, right, who may not quite be there, because at some point there has to be men like you and I, or the man who's listening, that says, I'm going to explore what the divine feminine is in with me, because honestly, I have no idea what the heck that term is. I don't even know what it feels like. This was me 7 years ago. I didn't even know that there was such thing as masculine and feminine energies outside of what's that symbol, the yin and yang symbol. I'm blanking on the name. But like that symbol you see everywhere on like the side of on t-shirts and things like that. That was my example of masculine, feminine. Oh, there's one side of the symbol, the other side of the symbol. I didn't actually know what that meant inside of me. But now that I've gone deeper on this journey and kept exploring, I realized, oh, like I have a feminine side that, that needs to cry. Like I was crying like 4 or 5 days ago, like just transmuting some energy. It's not something I do all the time, but it's something that I'll happily share to men, because having that sacred cry is literally moving that energetic divine feminine emotion up and out through you, so it doesn't hold on to you. It's a very clearing way. You see women crying a lot because they're very susceptible. It's a very clearing way. It's a natural way for the divine feminine to clear. Well, that also applies to men, because we have the divine feminine aspects as well. Maybe we're not crying nearly as much, but we're still nurturing that aspect. Now, before I turn it back over to you, I know this has been kind of a winding thing about masculine and feminine. It's also important, if we want to think of this from a linear, finite perspective. This can really break it down for a man who's first starting. I know it really helped me to think of a spectrum, right? You have a spectrum, and you have 100% in the spectrum, and that is your blend of masculine and feminine. You will go on this journey, and you can go on this journey of saying, okay, like, what is my ideal ratio on this spectrum? And it may change with time, but it's all about figuring out like what feels really great as a ratio. Typically I would say I'm probably, 70-30, masculine, flowing, stable energy, and then 30% like really creative and flowing. And I like to get wild sometimes and really let that divine feminine energy flow out of me in sacred dance or whatever that is. So just, you can play around with that and just tune in with yourself and say, like, where do I feel my energy is today? And if I'm feeling like, wow, I feel like I'm 70% divine feminine, I've just been in all of this chaos, as you alluded to, we have our sacred masculine, our divine feminine energies, but then we also have the flip side. I like to call them either the wounded masculine or the wounded feminine, or the hyper feminine or the hyper masculine. Toxic masculine is one that our society has picked up on. If I know I'm 70-30, most of the time I'll tune in and say, is that 70% because I was really just having a creative day of expression and healing? Sometimes. But often when it's 70-30 the other way, I actually am more in some of those hyper or wounded feminine energies, which, yes, it's okay to be there. But then I can utilize my tools and my breath and my practice to say, well, how do I come back to that ratio where I'm in my flow state, where I'm in my higher performance, where I feel like maybe it's 70-30. Now, again, this is an esoteric linear concept. It's not something to totally identify by, because as we know in the quantum and infinite intelligence, things are different than this perceived, but that's just a great starting point. And it's a tool that I really used when I first got going on this masculine feminine journey, because let's face it, it's not something we were taught in schools. It's not something that many of our fathers would even address. But likely they didn't even really know about it. Again, this is a remembering of this type of thing. You want to scale back before all of this stuff piled up in technology. People in ancient mystery schools knew about this, the co-creation and alignment of masculine and feminine within. Absolutely. But now this is coming back. So I'll kick it back over to you. And I really just encourage the man or the woman out there to not get so caught up in the masculine, feminine, trying to have it look a certain way, and just play with it, experiment with it. Read a couple really good books. If you want some, send me a message on Instagram. I'm happy to share. Read some books. Find your own truth in it. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. But going on this journey is going to help unity consciousness, finding your purpose, calling in your loved one. It's an amazing thing if you have a relationship with a significant other, whether it's a man or a woman, and you feel like you're ready for more intimacy. Maybe your relationship stagnated, and maybe this last 18 months has been really, really hard on you. If you as a man or a woman start going into intentionally understanding masculine and feminine dynamics within yourself, it's going to show up, and you're going to be able to do some really beautiful things with your relationship with your intimate partner by going on this journey. And I was very fortunate that when I started this journey, my partner went on it to me as well. And it mirrored to me very quickly that I was in that 70-30 feminine and a lot of wounded feminine. And I wasn't being a sacred protector, and I wasn't taking care of the basics to build this foundation, where then what happens with polarity, as we had talked to, is that pushes her. The woman will naturally, or I say women because it's not gender specific, but they will naturally try and balance that polarity. And that could end up with them being 70-30 the other way. And then you've got a situation that I experienced where my wife, my partner, was burning out, creating a lot of wealth and doing her business, but at the expense of her being in her divine feminine, where she wasn't doing her sacred rituals. She wasn't, working out as much. She wasn't in her body as much. She was doing all these things, ended up with adrenal fatigue. Like, what do you think for that part of our life, our sex life was, and our passion was? Like, it was completely off because we were in the different directions, and we weren't deeply looking at how do we find our own alignment so we can find the polarity and alignment within the relationship. Since then, I've stepped up, and I've learned that, like, giving her space, but also holding more sacred space for her, giving her alone time, encouraging her to take time for herself to do her wild crafting and her herbs and her creation and her guitar, has actually allowed her to flow more into her alignment. And this is a role of the sacred protector, right? Where if there's a man out there listening and none of you have gone on this journey, well, it could be, it doesn't have to be, but it could be your responsibility. And you're listening to this podcast, getting this information going, maybe I should look into this. And the nice thing is, when you change your polarity within you and you work on your dynamic, if you're in a sacred relationship with another, she is naturally going to adjust. It's really cool. And this is a powerful thing that I share with men, is if you want to take your relationship to the next level of whatever, passion, intimacy, crazy tantra, sex, maybe just more connectedness, work on the masculine, feminine dynamic in with you, bring intention to it, and naturally it will permeate into her shifting. And let me tell you, like, if you have a partner who's 80-20 in her divine feminine naturally, and she's 50-50, she won't be as expansive. She won't seem as open. She won't be as sexually active. She won't be just that bundle of joy that gives the sacred protector so much expansion, right? Like, seeing your partner and her divine creative flow slate just moving, like, that nourishes the sacred protector in us. That a man can literally sit there in his sacred protector energy and watch his partner, or watch a group of women, and just feel deeply satisfied. He's just holding space for them to dance or laugh or play. This is what we're remembering more and more and more. But it starts with that individual work inside of you.
Yeah. That's wow. Fantastic overview.
Thank you for holding space for that.
Pleasure.
I know that was a bit of a transition.
No.
I feel like that was me.
Totally, totally. It was beautiful. Yeah, beautiful transmission from you, and that combined a lot of, I'd say, universal awareness or possibility with your own personal experience. And again, I really appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability to talk about, where the challenges are, that because it's a practice, right? All the things that we're talking about, Spencer and I are no better than anybody else out there. We are curious. We're playing. We're experimenting. We have a particular intention, and that's what we want for. I mean, imagine if even 10%, 20% of this world we're in this similar space, what we'd be creating, and that's where we're going to. And what I was thinking as you were speaking, because I was thinking about my own experience with masculine and feminine energies, and that mine were quite perverted for their own reasons. I mean, I didn't have a very good idea about what masculine or men were, masculine energy was. My parents were divorced when I was very young. I grew up with a single mother who took on all the roles. She did it all, right? And I think, like you were saying, there is this thing that I've noticed that, well, whether it's the culture or I don't know how you want to trace it back, and I don't think it really matters. But as you were talking about, sort of this effeminization of men over the last sort of 50, 70 years, maybe it corresponds with the high rates of divorce and all that, and how maybe there's a cultural thing that men are kind of put into, here's your job, here's your place. Don't think about it for yourself. We'll tell you what to do. You'll get a paycheck. Go fight a war. Go to the corporation. Whatever.
Yeah.
And it leaves a man completely empty, right? There, because he is not responsible for discovering that purpose for himself. And what happens is, I think, because of the mothering, the childbirthing reality that women have held since time immemorial, they are naturally more responsible. They just take to it because they know that the feminine has to be protected, as you say. And if a man's not going to stand up and do that for them, well, then they will do it for themselves. And it creates an imbalance. As you say, like there is that play, that experiment in a partnership, whatever. And I know, as you say, like I also really struggle with these. They're useful terms, masculine and feminine, but they're complicated because we automatically put gender and other things on them. But like, as I say, I take a very Taoist perspective on things, and to see the flow of things, that it is absolutely necessary to have leaves fall off a tree in the autumn to become food for the forest floor, for that tree to go inside to reflect through the dark and cold times, because then it can come to fruit and give what it has to offer the next spring and summer to come. And that we also have that within us, and it is our the masculine, as we were talking about, that doing and creating and having accomplishments, whatever it is. If you, whether you're a man or a woman, if you do not balance that with receiving, with the time to take stock, to reflect, to understand where you are in something, you're going to overstress your adrenals regardless of who you are. And one of the things that I have really learned along my path is the value, and it goes back to what we were saying, the presence, the value of receiving, of taking a few minutes to, whether I'm reflecting on what happened during the day, on a particular project, on a podcast, on my year, and just stopping to receive. Okay, what has this been? Good, bad, indifferent. What has actually been, or what wants to be acknowledged? What wants to come out? And there is this opportunity to, to go within, to reflect on something, to receive what is there, because in that reception, in that in breath of bringing things back inside, like the tree bringing its energy back in autumn and winter, that's what makes possible the next action and it will be more informed, it will be more learned and with more understanding, because we are connecting as men with our own receptivity, our own ability to draw information in.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Again, that's another repeat transmission. This is awesome. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to some more of your podcast, Taylor, because that was a rewind moment again, for sure. And it really comes back to what we talked about at the start, right? Like the in breath, the acceptance and the knowingness that you are this life force energy coming in, imbuing your physical vessel, a sacred act where you're literally taking in this life force and it's moving through your body, allowing all the different layers of your body. And then that exhalation, that offering, like literally, like when you're exhaling, you're offering that level of your unique droplet of this water out back into creation. And that's where we really start getting into, the energetics of sacred. And when you really, really feel into it, all day long, you are walking up and around in your lifetime. Sometimes, and most of the time, you're not even conscious of your breath, but every single time you're inhaling this divine energy, imbuing yourself with possibility and potential, and then you're exhaling your brilliance, your magnificence, your God or goddess-like self, your divine intelligence, your sacred offering of love and your presence outwards into this reality. And to me, that is just so beautiful, just so beautiful, knowing that every single breath that you take in and you take out, you're offering yourself. And I'll give a great little tip that I share, with my clients. I do it with myself, and it's just another little simple practice that when you drop into these energetics, it can truly transform you, because when you're in the energy of expansiveness, you expand. When you're in the energy of love, you're expanding out love. So it's literally about simple hacks and processes just to train yourself before eventually it reverts to your natural loving state. So what I like to do is, sometimes I'll just catch myself walking and I'll say, with every breath and step I take, insert whatever your heart is feeling. With every breath and step I take, I expand deeper into love. With every breath and step I take, I'm calling in that beautiful house with ease. With every breath and step I take, I magnetize closer the timeline with my beautiful soul family surrounding me. With every breath and step I take, I am present with this moment. With every breath and step I take, I am connected to nature. Like you do this 5-10 times a day, and all of the sudden, as we talked about, an hour ago, you end up dropping into the present moment naturally and habitually, you might say. We can create it's habits, these simple little habits, and all of a sudden you can come in deeper level of presence. And it's so beautifully simple. Like if you're a brother out there, how cool is it to think that you can transform your relationship, which may be feeling subpar right now, by you literally saying a silly little mantra of, with every breath and step I take, I bring love to myself and transmit it to my partner. It's like, this is so simple. But like when you're saying that, because you're present with that thing, you're literally energetically putting that out into this divine infinite field. And that's how we remember that we're limitless. And it doesn't have to be simple. You don't have to wear some crazy technology headband, meditate for 20 hours a day, check it on a social media app. Oh, let's see how long someone else meditated. But you don't actually need any of that. All you have to do is these simple little mantras, these simple little moments, little moments of presence, the presence practice, you might call it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, Spencer. It brings us straight back to where we started. And then, because it's choice, it's intention, it's what we put into our words, into our consciousness, and that on on a higher quantum level, or more finite, or an infinite quantum level, is what we actually create in our world. Oh, brother, this has been an absolute pleasure. We have really had a beautiful connection. And I know that we've created gold for many listeners, and really grateful for your presence, your wisdom, your guidance, your direction, the structure. I really commend you for your ability to the masculine comes through with your structure, and 3 things, 1 thing, 2 things. It's a real pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we will continue the connection and continue to grow. And it is through connections like this, individually, and the connections we make to listeners, that we continue to expand and create a world where everything truly is possible.
Yes. Absolutely love that.